Discover how this 40-year-old woman transformed mockery into love with an amazing cowboy's heart. In a small, bustling diner in Marfa, Texas, Emma felt every eye on her as she hustled between tables. The scent of bacon and coffee hung thick in the air, a warm cocoon that contrasted sharply with her spiraling doubts. Once an associate in a prestigious law firm, she now remembered the thrill of advocacy and courtroom battles through a fog of regret. Her ex-husband's mocking words echoed in her mind. "You'll never make anything of yourself without me." The shame of her divorce hung like a shroud. Stereotypes whispered about her age, her choices, each sentence a burden. Could she reclaim her voice without risking everything? Caleb walked through the door, his rugged presence a balm to her fraying edges. The way he laughed lit up the room, drawing her in. Their conversations about ranch life and sustainable farming practices warmed her, reminding Emma of a long-lost confidence. They shared stories, Emma's of lively debates in court, Caleb's of starlit nights tending livestock. Each chat chipped away at the self-doubt, renewing a flicker of purpose within her. But with the warmth came a chill, a creeping uncertainty that collided violently with her dreams. Could she defy expectations, even with the growing threat from her former firm lurking behind her? The diner had its cadence, the clattering plates echoing her internal tumult. "This isn't just about you," she murmured to herself, wiping a table that felt heavier than usual. What example was she setting for her teenagers as they faced their own battles in a world that often ridiculed? The pressing need to protect them weighed heavily on her heart. Then came news of an upcoming community meeting focused on women's rights. As excitement filled her veins, so did fear, a fierce duel within her psyche. Should she risk everything for what she believed in, or hold her tongue to shield her children from the fallout? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma's mind raced as she collected empty cups, each one a fragment of her ambition slipping away. Would standing up mean losing the precarious stability she held for her family? Caleb had poured courage into her words, but as the day wore on, the looming shadow of her former firm chilled her optimism. "You'll regret this," an unnamed voice echoed in her mind, causing her hands to tremble as she scrubbed the same plate for the third time. When she finally received a phone call from the firm, the threat was real: back down or else. Each word stripped her of resolve, tightening a noose around her spirit. Here, at the precipice of reckoning, Emma's heart raced. Would she surrender to fears festering in her mind, or rise to tear the mask off the injustices she saw? The clamor of the diner faded, leaving her alone with a singular, overwhelming reality. This moment could either propel her forward, or bury her beneath layers of self-doubt and consequence. Would she claim the justice that was hers to fight for, regardless of the cost? The stakes had never been higher, and as her resolve flickered, the question loomed like a storm. Was she ready to face whatever awaited her on the other side? Emma stood at the edge of a decision that could alter the very fabric of her life. Each second felt stretched, time folding in on itself as she weighed her options. The shadow of her former firm loomed larger, its presence a constant reminder of the walls she'd built around her ambitions. Would stepping beyond those walls mean embracing uncertainty? Or would it return her to the suffocating familiarity of defeat? Caleb's warmth lingered in her mind, his laughter a soothing balm against the cold reality that threatened to engulf her. They shared everything over their casual dinners, dreams, fears, and the simple joy of each other's company. Yet every moment of connection drew her deeper into the dilemma of risk versus security. Could she rely on this new passion in her life, this blossoming bond with Caleb, to support her as she ventured into unsafe territory? That night, after the diner closed, Emma sat alone in the silence that enveloped her home. The dishes were washed, the children tucked in, but her heart raced with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. She thought back to the community meeting, her thoughts spinning like a reckless cyclone. If she spoke out, if she dared to reclaim her voice, how would it impact her family? Would they see her as a paragon of strength, or as a foolish dreamer caught in the undertow of her past? The glow of her phone drew her attention, a message from Caleb blinking persistently. "Thinking of you." How simple, yet how profound. His belief in her ignited a swirling tide of hope within. With each interaction, he mirrored back a version of herself that had been dulled by years of doubt. Could it be that she had been underserved by the narratives woven around her? Emma pulled a notebook toward her, the blank pages taunting her with potential. Fear clawed at her as she poised her pen over the first line. What could she possibly have to say that mattered? Yet, the thought of remaining silent when she had so much to share stirred a rebellious fire in her stomach. She scribbled furiously, each sentence brimming with the passions she had buried for too long. Her experiences in court, the injustices she had witnessed, the hopes she carried for her children. The steady rhythm of her pen against paper matched the racing beat of her heart. She began to draft a speech for the community meeting, words that would echo her fierce belief in equality and justice. The enormity of what she was embarking on washed over her in waves, each one stirring both excitement and trepidation. This was not just about her voice. It would be a message for everyone who felt trapped by the weight of a society that often silenced them. But would she have the courage to stand before them, to recount the battles she'd fought personally and professionally? With each stroke of her pen, doubt began to recede. The voice of her ex-husband whispered warnings, but the sound of Caleb's encouragement rose stronger, like a buoy in a storm-tossed sea. It was time to confront the past, to dismantle the walls and step into a world awaiting her words, the real Emma, beyond the judgments and shackles of her past life. As she penned the final lines, a sense of clarity enveloped her. She would speak, and with that declaration, a profound shift within her solidified. Strength surged through her, intertwining with the fear, melding into a fierce resolve. But just as she set the notebook down, an unexpected knock rattled through her contemplative solitude. Who could it be at this hour? With her heart racing once more, Emma rose to answer the door, her mind racing back to the gravity of the decision she had just embraced. The moment hung heavy in the air. Would this visitor be a catalyst for a new chapter, or a reminder of her old life? As Emma opened the door, the familiar face of her sister Lily filled the frame. The warm light from inside spilled across the porch, casting her sister's features into sharp relief. She was breathless. Excitement mingled with concern etched across her brow. "Emma! I was worried about you," she gasped, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The sudden intrusion disrupted the peaceful cocoon Emma had spun around herself, yanking her back into a world where expectations tethered her to a past that felt increasingly alien. "What's going on?" Emma asked, shutting the door behind her and trying to gauge the quickening pulse of her heart. "I heard about the meeting tomorrow. Are you really going to speak?" Lily's eyes narrowed slightly, searching for the answer she hoped to find, but feared as well. Taking a deep breath, Emma nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I am." The words felt foreign, yet empowering, as if they belonged to a version of herself that had been waiting for this moment. Lily's expression morphed into a mixture of pride and apprehension. "You're sure about this? It's a big leap, Em. And what about, do you want me to keep pretending forever?" Emma interrupted, a spark igniting within her as the shadows of her insecurities danced provocatively at the edges of her conviction. This isn't about the past anymore. I need to do this. For myself, for the kids. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, thick with unuttered fears. Emma watched her sister wrangle with a blend of protective instincts and unfulfilled dreams of her own. The memories of all the times Emma had stifled her ambitions to suit others weighed heavily in the air, but she refused to let them smother her now. Lily hesitated, casting her gaze to the side, as if she were afraid the truth would slip too easily from her lips. I don't want you to get hurt again. What if they turn against you? What if the spotlight blinds you? Then I'll navigate it, Emma replied, her voice steady as an anchor. The fear was there, rippling beneath her resolve, but an undeniable strength surged forth. Each minute spent doubting herself felt like robbery, not just of her time, but of her potential. Lily's countenance softened, the tension bleeding out as she stepped closer. Promise me you'll think about your safety too. You don't have to do it alone. I can help. Emma's chest tightened, a wave of gratitude washing over her. You've always been there for me. I appreciate that. But I need this. I need to find my voice. An ember of newfound determination flickered within Emma, illuminating the corners of her mind that had long been overshadowed. She realized that this wasn't just about the speech or the community meeting. It was a statement of who she had become, a fiery force, ready to stand tall against her past, unafraid to be her unapologetic self. Lily smiled, offering silent support, a bond strengthened by adversity. Emma turned, leading the way back to her desk, where her speech awaited her like a treasure map leading to a land of new possibilities. As she picked up her pen again, she felt the familiar pulse of creativity throbbing in her grip. More than a speech, she began crafting an anthem of defiance against the doubts that had haunted her for years. But before Emma could put pen to paper, her phone vibrated with an incoming call, the screen lighting up with an unexpected name. A creeping anxiety slithered up her spine. Who could this be now? And just like that, she stood at a crossroad again, weighing the momentum she had built against the uncertainty that echoed in that familiar name. Was the past coming back to snatch away her hard-won courage? The tension hung like a fog, thick and alive. The phone vibrated insistently, a relentless reminder of the reality Emma had tried so hard to leave behind. She stared at the screen, the name staring back like an unwelcome spectre from her past. It felt as if her old self were on the other side of that call, waiting to remind her of all the failures she'd worked so hard to put behind her. Answer it, her mind urged, but another part of her instinctively recoiled. Instead, she remained frozen, her heart racing like a caged bird seeking an escape. What do I want? She whispered under her breath, wrestling with an inner conflict that threatened to erode the clarity she had just gained. Emma? Lily's voice broke through the tension. Are you going to pick it up or what? It might be important. With a hesitant breath, Emma let the phone slip from her fingers and into the palms of uncertainty. It could be a mistake, she finally responded, her voice barely above a whisper. Or it could be him trying to drag me back into old chaos. I understand your fear, but it's your call, Lily replied, a solid force of support even when Emma felt so fragile. If this is just a distraction, don't let it rob you of your energy right now. Deep down, Emma knew waiting wouldn't ease the clamor troubling her mind. With determination flooding her veins, she plucked the phone from the table. She could choose her own narrative, a narrative where she wasn't just defined by the scars of her past, but instead by her willingness to confront them directly. She pressed the call button, her heart pounding with every second it took for the connection to go through. Hello? A familiar voice echoed, cloaked in hesitation and laden with unspoken apologies. Hi. Emma's own voice sounded foreign. Every syllable danced on the edge of her vulnerability. "Emma, it's been a while." The words tumbled out, a mixture of sorrow and relief. Each word dripped with nostalgia, pulling at the threads of the life Emma had frantically disentangled herself from. Memories surged, taunting her with their vividness, but she fought to stay anchored in her present resolve. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. "I just thought... maybe we could talk. I owe you an apology." "An apology?" The weight of those words lingered heavily in the air, mixing with Emma's own insecurities. Was the admission enough to bridge the chasm of hurt his actions had carved years ago? "You hurt me. You know that, right?" "I was stupid. I didn't understand," he responded. But the earnestness in his tone felt like empty words, drifting through the vastness of the past. Something clenched in Emma's stomach as she pondered what reclaiming the past could mean for her journey of self-discovery. "I don't want to dig into old wounds. I'm moving forward. This isn't just a nostalgic trip for me," she asserted, refusing to slip back into the vulnerability she had fought so hard to escape. "But what if this is part of your journey?" he pressed, his voice earnest. "I know I can't change the past, but I want to apologize, to be part of your present if you'll let me." The question hung in the air, heavy and pregnant with possibility. It forced Emma to recognize the delicate balance between dismissing the past and using it to inform her future. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the realization that she held the power to choose. It was deeper than forgiveness. It was about reclaiming her right to move forward on her own terms. "It's all about the choices you make now," she thought to herself, adopting a newfound sense of control. "How will I define my future?" But just as those thoughts began to take root, an unexpected crackling on the line interrupted her contemplations. They weren't alone in this moment. The call's connection wavered, and a rush of static filled the silence like an ominous warning. Emma's breath caught in her throat, worry creeping back in. What if his voice wasn't the only thing signaling a return to the past? In that moment, as everything hung precariously in the balance, Emma stood at yet another crossroad. The road ahead was unclear, but she realized that the choices she made now would shape her story, her truth, for good. With a deep breath, she glanced back at the speech still waiting for her on the desk, bold letters urging her forward. The full breadth of her journey still lay ahead, shrouded in uncertainty, but vibrant with possibility. As she prepared to respond, one thought resonated fiercely within her. Could this call help transform her closure into a new beginning? And with that question buried deep in her mind, she steadied herself for whatever came next. The static on the line dissipated, replaced momentarily by the weight of silence. Emma clenched the phone tighter, as if it could ground her from the tidal wave of emotions pulling her under. Her heart still raced, but now it pulsed with fresh urgency. Here was an opportunity not just to reconcile with a ghost from her past, but to wield her voice, her power over it. "I don't want to discuss history," she said finally, forcing herself to sound firm. There was a tremor in her voice that betrayed her resolve, a reminder of how deeply the past could still echo within her. "What do you want now? What if I don't want you to be part of my present?" "Emma," he began, but there was a hesitation, an acknowledgement of her boundaries. "I understand. I truly do. But maybe if we talk, it might lead to something more." "More?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips, full of disbelief. "What do you mean by more? Repeating past mistakes? Watching the story unfold as it did before?" His silence spoke volumes. She could almost hear the clanking of the clichés he'd prepared, polished phrases he thought might mend her wounds. But she was done giving anyone the power over her narrative. "Look, I appreciate the apology, I really do," Emma continued, inhaling deeply as she poised herself to step into the unknown. "But I'm not at a crossroads because of you. I'm at a crossroads because of me. With each word, she felt her confidence swell. At that moment, she wasn't just Emma, the vulnerable girl haunted by her past. She was Emma, the woman ready to carve out her future, even if that meant allowing the silence between them to stretch until the tension was unbearable. Do you know what I'm doing? She pressed, the resolve in her voice defining this pivotal moment. I'm giving a speech at a conference next week, my first one. You wouldn't know the joy of standing up in front of a room and speaking from the heart. It terrifies me, but I'm doing it. Not for you or anyone else, but for me. I didn't realize, he began. But she cut him off. Exactly. The past is not my stage anymore, she stated, feeling bold words sweeping over her insecurities like a fierce wind on a cool morning. I'm writing my own story, and I'm not looking for secondary characters who only show up when it suits them. A rush of exhilaration washed over her. The struggle she faced originally didn't merely exist in the hurt inflicted upon her. It now transformed into a resistance against the trauma that could steal her narrative. So let's be clear. This conversation is my choice, not a concession. Emma, He started again, but it was hastily interrupted by the unmistakable blare of her phone ringing, an incoming call she never expected. Her heart dropped. She debated whether to answer it or to allow the distraction to pass. Can we talk later? She asked quickly, her mind already racing with uncertainty. Later, he echoed, surprise coloring his tone. Yes, if that's what you want, she said, surprising even herself with the wavering invitation. She didn't want a commitment from him. She didn't even want the burden of his presence. But in recognizing that she might still be open to change, if on her terms, something shifted within her. Emma hung up before he could respond. The road she tread was hers alone now, with the potential for adventure looming ahead. As she glanced at the speech, purple highlights framing her reflection in the light, a thought catalyzed through her mind. What if she could transform her past pain into a powerful message about resilience? But as she stared at her notes, a shiver ran down her spine. Everything felt simultaneously thrilling and overwhelming. Was she ready to lean into her vulnerability again, this time in front of an audience that might witness her evolving story? The foundation for her rebirth was set, but how would she ensure this won't become another pitfall? Determined, she sat down at her desk, pondering every word she could use to articulate not just her journey, but her very essence. The tension hung thick as fresh ideas blossomed, waiting to be sculpted into a form that could either liberate her or leave her exposed. The call from her past loomed, and within that unease came the realization that navigating this terrain would require more than just openness. It demanded bravery, the kind that could only emerge from her refusal to be defined by others. Swallowing her apprehension, she opened her notebook to a blank page, ready to take the first step toward redefining herself. And just as she began to write, a knock at the door interrupted her, crackling with a wholly different kind of uncertainty. Who could that be? What could they want? Emma hesitated, the knock startling her from the steady focus she had begun to forge. Her heart quickened again. This time it wasn't a call from her past, but an unexpected visitor. With a quick glance at her hastily scrawled notes, doubt fluttered through her chest. Should she ignore the knock, retreating back into the cocoon she had woven around her resolve? Or should she face whatever or whoever awaited her on the other side of that door? The door, she realized, served as a metaphor for her life. It had been both a protective barrier and a threshold to new experiences. Taking a deep breath, she pushed aside her trepidation and opened it. Standing there was a stranger, a man in worn jeans and a weathered leather jacket that hinted at a life spent outside, perhaps under the vast expanse of a star-studded sky. His dark hair was tousled, sticking up slightly, as if a gentle breeze had just tousled it. and his layered voice made her momentarily forget the impending weight of her responsibilities. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his green eyes sparkling with warmth, "but I just moved in next door and thought I'd introduce myself. I'm Jake." Emma swallowed, caught off guard. In her tightly wound existence of trying to take charge, she often shied away from spontaneous moments. Yet something about him stirred a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even a challenge. "Emma. Nice to meet you, Emma." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his hands casually resting in his pockets, exuding a relaxed energy. "I thought I'd bring over some homemade cookies. Neighbors should always share, right?" She laughed lightly, the sound surprising even herself. "Right. That's how we build community, I suppose." Jake's smile broadened. "So, what's got you locked away on this fine day? Planning your escape from this ordinary world?" Her laughter faded as she remembered her speech, the anxieties creeping back into her thoughts like shadows. "Something like that." "Public speaking?" His question was filled with genuine interest. Emma nodded, reluctant to reveal too much but feeling compelled to test the waters. "Yeah, a talk about resilience." His brow furrowed slightly, as if contemplating her words. Resilience. That's powerful. We all have our battles, don't we? The openness in his expression made her instinctively want to draw back, to shut down again, to guard her vulnerability. Yet she pressed on. "We do. It's what we learn from those battles that defines us. Or at least, that's what I'm hoping to figure out." "Why do you want to speak about it?" Jake asked, tilting his head slightly, his gaze steady and inviting. Emma found the ease in his demeanor disarming. "I think I want to help others see that it's possible to redefine your life, no matter how low you feel," she said, her voice gaining momentum as she spoke. "But the more I think about it, the more I worry about what people will think. What if they don't connect? What if I fail?" He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing slightly, a spark of determination igniting in his expression. "Tell me, Emma, when you think about your talk, what do you want for yourself?" She paused, the question reverberating through her mind. What did she want? Beyond validation or acceptance, could she envision standing proudly at the podium, sharing her story with authenticity? Could she truly embrace her experience as a badge of honor instead of a shackle? "I want to feel proud," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to take ownership of my story." Jake's expression softened. "Then don't hesitate. Let each word that comes out of your mouth be a piece of your reclaiming that power. You don't owe anyone an explanation or their approval." His conviction struck a deeper chord of courage within her, enticing her to examine her fears head-on. As the weight of her hesitations began to lift, Emma spoke boldly. "Maybe I'll stand in front of that crowd and let them know that even when we feel broken, we can rise again." "That's the spirit," he replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "And if all else fails, I'll be sitting in the front row, cheering you on." A burst of laughter escaped her, the idea of him encouraging her amidst a sea of strangers, surprising yet reassuring. Perhaps there was something to this simple encounter, a spark igniting within her, illuminating a path she had yet to truly embrace. As the minutes slipped by, Emma felt her mind racing with newfound ideas. But another thought intruded, clouding the euphoria. Could this simple exchange be a prelude to something more? After all, mysteries often rewarded those who dared to explore them. Jake took a step back, reminding her of their reality. "Well, I'll leave you to your writing. I look forward to hearing your speech." "Thanks, Jake," she managed, her heart swelling with gratitude. As he walked away, the flicker of possibility began to glow brighter. In that moment, Emma understood. Navigating her journey would encompass more than solitude or fear. It meant inviting others in, forming connections that could challenge her story in ways she never imagined. But just as her burgeoning confidence began to reshape her perspective, she pondered. What about that unresolved call from her past? Would it wait any longer to disrupt everything she had begun to create? And just as she turned back to her desk, feeling the excitement blend with underlying trepidation, her phone buzzed again, signaling an incoming message, the kind that held the potential to either uplift her new resolve or threaten her unfolding journey. Emma's heart raced. What could it say? Emma felt the weight of time hang heavy in the air as she stared at her phone. The screen lit up with a message that felt poised to fracture her newfound resolve. The thought of facing whatever awaited her there was daunting, but retreating into the safety of her thoughts was no longer an option. Not after her encounter with Jake. With trembling fingers, she opened the message. It was from her old friend Sarah, someone she hadn't spoken to in months. Can we talk? I heard about your upcoming speech. I think it's time you faced some things from the past. The anxiety swelled like a tide inside her, surging and crashing against the fragile barriers she had built. The mere suggestion of revisiting old wounds was terrifying. Suddenly, the excitement she felt earlier flickered like a candle flame threatened by a gust of wind. But deep down, she recognized this moment for what it was, a crossroads. Could confronting her past alongside her ambitions empower her to redefine more than just her present? Emma sank into her chair, contemplating the enormity of reaching out. Sarah had witnessed Emma's struggles firsthand. She could offer a perspective that had been buried under layers of shame and doubt. But she was also the keeper of secrets, stories of pain that had shaped Emma's choices. Facing that would require more than courage. It would demand vulnerability she feared exposing again. Just text her back, she whispered to herself, but doubt held her captive. What if Sarah pushed too hard, dredging up memories Emma wasn't ready to confront? The conflicting thoughts tangled in her mind, but one thing was clear. The path she was on required more than isolated determination. She wanted to embrace her story, but to do so, she might need to unravel some of its more painful threads. After a moment's pause where silence threatened to evolve into despair, she took a deep breath and responded, "Sure, I can meet tomorrow." As soon as she hit send, a rush of adrenaline surged through her body, igniting the embers of her resolve. By opening the channel of communication, she was not just risking discomfort but also reasserting control. This conversation wouldn't be about digging up the past for the sake of it. It would be a stepping stone in her journey to owning her narrative. The fluttering anxiety made way for a deeper sense of determination. This could be what Jake had meant when he spoke about reclaiming power. Perhaps she had been defining resilience through her lens of fear rather than through the lens of growth. Soon after sending the message, Emma felt bold enough to finally open her notes once more. The white space stared back at her, but instead of seeing blankness, she began to visualize possibilities, stories of overcoming that had already stitched the fabric of her life, intertwined with her vulnerabilities. The familiar thrum of inspiration began to pulse through her veins as she started scribbling again, the words flowing as if liberated by her decision to confront her past. She articulated her experiences with more intention and clarity, driven by the purpose of connecting. Yet lurking beneath the surface was a gnawing question. What if Sarah revealed aspects of her past that could shatter this new clarity? Just as Emma began to feel the excitement of her evolving narrative, a familiar but unwanted thought crept back in, morphing her confidence into uncertainty. What if, after everything, the conversation with Sarah uncovered layers she wasn't ready to face? With her pen poised above the paper, she hesitated. Could embracing her story, with all its brokenness, promise the kind of freedom she was desperately seeking? Or would it force her to relive moments she had long wished to bury? And there, at the intersection of past and present, Emma knew this was only a prelude. Tomorrow could either solidify the bridge of her acceptance, or take her back into shadows she thought she'd left behind? The question lingered unsettlingly. Was she ready for the truth that could reshape her journey? The morning sun streamed through Emma's bedroom window, casting long shadows that danced across her floor. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming conversation with Sarah. Today felt like a precipice, a moment laden with potential and peril. As she dressed in a simple but intentional outfit, a blend of comfort and professionalism, she felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Yet today's nervousness was laced with a hint of anticipation, as if she were standing on the edge of a new beginning. Looking in the mirror, Emma scrutinized her reflection, searching for strength behind the familiar features. Who was she without the scars of her past? More importantly, who could she become by confronting them? The question hung in the air, heavy yet invigorating, and she straightened her posture, determined to embody the confidence she wanted to project. Despite her shaky hands, she turned her notes from last night into a neatly organized folder, incorporating insights she had recorded about her life experiences. Each page told a story, a chapter of resilience, vulnerability, learning, and ultimately, redemption. Writing those pages had felt like therapy. They ignited a flame of purpose within her, illuminating the layers she had long kept hidden. Emma set out to meet Sarah, the air outside crisp and almost electric with the promise of change. It was a refreshing contrast to her swirling thoughts, which felt like storm clouds in her mind. As she walked, she rehearsed the dialogue in her head, struggling to find the right balance between honesty and self-preservation. Would she be strong enough to show the parts of her that ached for recognition, or would the fear of reliving pain again silence her? Arriving at the cafe, she spotted Sarah at a corner table, her familiar figure sending a rush of conflicting emotions through Emma. It felt like a homecoming and a departure all at once. Sarah looked up, offering a tentative smile that mirrored her own uncertainty. "Hey," Emma said, the single word dropping between them like a stone, heavy with implications. "Hey," replied Sarah, her voice softening with familiarity. "Thanks for coming." Emma sat down, the warmth of their connection battling the cold encroachment of past hurts. They exchanged small talk, but both sensed the impending weight of the conversation looming above them. The small cafe buzzed around them, but Emma felt as though they were cloistered in a bubble, isolated from the world outside. "About what I mentioned," Sarah started, her brows furrowing as if summoning the courage to dive deeper. "Yeah, I'm ready," Emma interjected, surprising herself with the assertiveness of her tone. The decision to take the reins in the moment deflected her earlier fears, a step towards seizing her own narrative. "Okay, but I want you to know I'm here for you. No pressure," Sarah said, her words gentle yet firm. It was a reminder that this was a partnership, a shared journey rather than an interrogation. Encouraged, Emma took a breath that felt like a breakthrough. "I've been thinking a lot about our past, the moments I've avoided. I believe if I embrace them, I can find peace. But it's terrifying." The weight of her admission hung in the air, fragile yet electrifying. It was as if she had unleashed a chain reaction, a crack in the facade that had kept her safe yet stagnant. Each revelation bore the potential for profound transformation. "Yes, it is," Sarah admitted, her gaze unwavering. "But facing those fears is how you'll truly begin to know who you are beneath it all." Emma felt a tremor of doubt, but before she could retreat, another wave of determination surged within her. This was her story, and it was time to reclaim it. As the conversation deepened, the lines between fear and acceptance began to blur, leading Emma to realize that confronting her past might just fortify her present. A new understanding unfolded, one that suggested acceptance could indeed be her strongest ally. Just then, Sarah leaned forward, her voice lowering conspiratorially. I know something you might want to consider about that time in high school. Something about Jake. Emma's heart raced, the revelation stirring a tempest of emotions within her. The moment of truth loomed closer, and she couldn't escape it anymore. How would this information shift her newfound clarity? The unease entwined with excitement, but Emma's resolve hardened. She was not just ready for this conversation, she was ready to transform it. And with that duality shimmering brilliantly before her, she knew the direction her journey had to take. Emma's breath hitched in her throat as Sarah's words settled like a stone in the pit of her stomach. The mention of Jake was a riff in a long-forgotten melody, one that conjured old insecurities she had meticulously buried beneath layers of time and trauma. Yet, she was resolute. It was time for the echo of those memories to transform from a haunting into a lesson. Setting aside her trepidation, Emma leaned in closer, curiosity mingling with concern. "What about Jake?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt inside. "I remember how things ended. Not just for you and Jake, but for all of us. We were so young, Emma. And, well, I think he felt terrible about how he treated you later on." Sarah's earnest gaze pierced through the cafe's buzz. "I've heard things, you know. He's changed." The words reverberated in Emma's mind, a cacophony of emotions. Hadn't she spent years assigning blame for heartache, their teenage fallout rendering her unworthy in her own eyes? The prospect of Jake's remorse offered an unexpected glimmer of validation. Could this moment be a key to unlocking her pain, or would it lead her down a path she was unprepared to navigate? "Why didn't I know this?" she breathed, her pursuit of clarity taking a sharp detour. "How can I move on if I keep discovering pieces of my past like this?" Sarah offered a gentle smile, a beacon of reassurance. "Because sometimes facing our past is a process, not a one-time event. You've already made great strides by confronting what's been holding you back. Maybe, just maybe, this is a part of your healing journey." Emma's pulse quickened. Healing. The word felt foreign, yet inviting. With each mention, she could feel the chains that once bound her loosening, granting her a newfound sense of freedom. But with that freedom came the challenging prospect of facing Jake again, of confronting the boy who had unwittingly reshaped her high school experience and influenced her future relationships. "What do I even say to him?" she mused, her mind racing through a maze of potential conversations. "Can I forgive him? Will that matter?" "Only if you're ready," Sarah replied, her tone imbued with a softness that made Emma acutely aware of their bond. "Forgiveness isn't about him. It's for you. It opens a door to release what you've been holding onto for so long." Emma felt her defenses wavering. Guilt and resentment intertwined, blurring the lines of possibility. She had dismissed her teenage self as weak when she stumbled down the road of rejection and disappointment. Yet Sarah's words highlighted a gap she could now fill with empowerment. The truth hung in the air. She didn't have to be defined by her past. She could reintegrate those experiences into something stronger, something profoundly herself. "Okay," Emma said, her voice firming. "I'll consider it, but how do I start?" "Start by confronting what you feel," Sarah advised. "Write it down, talk about it, craft your narrative, and when you're ready, reach out to him." Sometimes, reconciliation starts with a simple question. Emma contemplated the mechanism of reconciliation, the idea that healing was not a solitary act, but often occurred in tandem with others. The tension of unresolved history mixed with excitement at the prospect of personal growth. She felt a surge of agency within her, one that compelled her to take back control of her life. The cafe buzzed on, oblivious to her epiphany. Emma was no longer just a shadow participant in her life story, she was ready to shift dynamics. As she and Sarah spoke, Emma began to outline her strategy. Would she send a text, an email, or ask to meet face-to-face? Before diving deeper into her thought process, A sudden realization gripped her. What if Jake hasn't changed? What if reaching out only reopens wounds? All valid fears, Sarah acknowledged, her expression thoughtful. But is living in fear of the past, no longer holding you back, worth the chance of healing? Emma nodded, feeling the pull of a dual desire, fear and yearning, apprehension and hope. She was at a crossroads, where the parts of her past began to unravel into the fabric of her future. Each decision loomed larger, granting her the power to chart the course of her own narrative. As she left the cafe, Emma's heart pounded, not with anxiety, but exhilaration. A choice lay ahead, and with it, the possibility of speaking to Jake felt less like a chain and more like a key to unlock her next chapter. The journey had reiterated that reclaiming her past was but a step. Now, the next choice lingered like a bittersweet symphony hung in the air. What would she write in that first message? Would it turn the page, or merely open a door she wasn't yet ready to walk through? Emma knew she needed to navigate this murky water with both caution and resolve. The moment for action was on the horizon, and facing it would demand not just bravery, but a commitment to herself. And just as uncertainty loomed, an unexpected energy surged within her, driving Emma toward a decision that would redefine not only her narrative, but the way she viewed love and worth. Which path would she choose? A reckless reach for closure, or a careful preparation for what lay ahead? The answer felt tantalizingly imminent, ready to unveil the next revelation waiting just beyond her reach. The next morning, Emma awoke to the soft rays of sunlight filtering through her window, illuminating her path with a warmth that felt newfound and invigorating. Each dawn felt like an invitation, but today she sensed it pulsed with genuine purpose. She had taken a significant step by agreeing to meet with Sarah, who had encouraged not just confrontation, but self-discovery. As she dressed, her thoughts flowed like a river, newly freed from years of sediment. Emma ran through her plans for the day, weaving elements of courage and resilience into a mental tapestry. She was determined to confront the issues of her past, including Jake, and to articulate her evolving narrative with clarity and strength. She gathered her notes, her impending speech reminding her of the power that lay in her own voice. As she stood at her desk, poised to write, memories of her past struggles merged into reflections of personal growth. The debilitating fear that had shrouded her for years began to lift like heavy fog under the sun. Today wasn't just another day where she tiptoed around her past. It was a pivotal moment of transformation. The cafe echoed with the familiarity of conversations and laughter as Emma and Sarah settled into their seats. This time, as they spoke, Emma felt a sense of kinship rooted in mutual understanding. Their shared experiences flowed as easily as coffee from the pot. They revisited memories without the weight of regret, but rather as stepping stones that had led Emma toward empowerment. "I've decided," Emma finally declared, her voice steady, unlike the inner tumult still simmering beneath the surface. "I'm going to reach out to Jake. Not for him, but for me." Sarah's eyes lit up with encouragement. "Yes, remember, this is about owning your story. You're not going to fix things in the past, but you can reclaim your narrative moving forward." That was the essence of what Emma craved, to reclaim her life as her own in this moment. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed out a message. "Hey Jake, it's Emma. I've been thinking about reaching out. Would you be open to talking sometime?" As she hit send, a wash of relief washed over her. She knew there would be no turning back, but for the first time, the act felt liberating rather than burdensome. She was no longer defined by the mockery of her past. She was setting the stage for her future. Freedom flooded through her. Here was Emma, no longer bound by the echoes of old mistakes or disheartening shadows, but stepping defiantly into the light, prepared to confront the complexities of her history. In the following hours, Emma embraced the quiet anticipation of waiting for a response. Every minute that ticked by surged with potential. When her phone lit up with Jake's name, her pulse quickened. "I'd like that. Let's meet tomorrow." A wave of exhilaration surged through her, but with it came a tinge of anxiety. Meeting Jake could revive old wounds, yet the promise of healing lingered in the air, the very reconciliation Emma sought. That night, seated at her desk, she transformed feelings of anxious anticipation into words that transcended her personal struggles. She took a leap, channeling her unveiling truth into her speech, drafting powerful anecdotes that celebrated resilience and rebirth. Each phrase echoed her commitment to moving forward with newfound autonomy. When the presentation day arrived, her heart thumped steadily with the rhythm of resolve. Speaking in front of a crowd was no longer overwhelming. It felt like a summoning of the strength woven into her fabric through every hardship faced. As she took the stage, she illuminated her journey with clarity. The words flowed effortlessly from her, igniting the air with truths she had kept close for so long. Each experience shared tugged at the audience's heartstrings, bridging connection and vulnerability. Emma's voice had transformed from one of uncertainty into a clarion call, a symbol of empowerment for every individual who felt silenced. As she concluded, the applause ringing in her ears was sweet validation. There stood Emma, a woman reborn into her own narrative, no longer tethered by past mockery, but defined by wisdom and unwavering strength. In that moment of triumph, she felt an exhilarating rush of fulfillment, not just for herself, but for everyone who dared to rise against their history. After the speech, as she descended from the stage, a familiar green gaze met her own. Jake stood in the crowd. Emma's heart thrummed, a silent understanding passing between them. Reaching this point transformed her understanding of fulfillment. She not only conquered the ghosts of her past, but emerged as a beacon of resilience, not only for herself, but for others who needed her story. She had rewritten her health into strength, her story into empowerment. Emma had achieved personal growth, proven that she was more than the questions of her past. The threads of her identity had reformed, woven into something strong and glorious. It was not a perfect narrative, but it was hers, a testament to her unwavering spirit. And as she reflected on her journey, she resolved to embrace every chapter ahead with authenticity and courage, ready for whatever challenges life would present. Today was the beginning of everything she had ever wanted. Now, it's your turn to embrace your own journeys of growth and transformation. You need to subscribe now to join a community that believes in personal overcoming stories. Leave a like now to ignite the energy of this content further and keep inspiring others. Comment your reactions and your theories about Emma's profound journey. What resonated with you the most? And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the message of hope and resilience.